Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at gcnlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set, cocked, locked. Here we go. Your dial set correctly to USAPrepares.com. We're delighted you're here. We broadcast 2 hours from high atop the Missouri Ozark Mountains. There's a link to your instructors on the website, USAPrepares.com, USAPREPARES.com. Captain John Ragan's with us. Welcome, Captain John Ragan.
Good morning, Vincent.
Good morning, John. I see you've been very busy over the last week preparing today's lessons for us. The blackboard is full of links if you'd like to, class, if you'd like to peruse them as we travel down the links of today's broadcast classroom. With Captain John Ragan, U.S. Air Force Reserves retired, thefinancialstateoftheunion.com, and please click on the news tab, or eze33.org, and you may click on the news tab there, and I'll take you right to where I am at thefinancialstateoftheunion.com. And, hey, John, you've been really, really busy. John, people have been asking me about you. They want to know how you're doing. They want to know how you're doing, and I don't know what to say. Is there anything you want to say?
Well, let's talk about that next week. There's so much to talk about there all on its own.
Okay.
But today, there's a couple of things that's not even on the list. I think the big one that's in the news right now is this ransomware attack that has hit
Yes.
6 figures worth of computers worldwide. And there's so many bits and pieces to this, and whether or not this is, just a rogue element out there taking advantage of some of the recently released information from WikiLeaks, or whether this is a deep state op, it doesn't really matter. What it does is it starts pushing us further down the road for what the powers that be are trying to accomplish. A lot of the computers that have been affected were the modern Windows that are still supported. It's just that people had not updated their computers. That's part of the push that we see getting people on Windows 10, where you don't have control on whether or not you update. You have older computers that are getting infected and causing problems. And in fact, Microsoft has done the unprecedented move of actually issuing a security patch for a handful of no longer supported Windows and Windows Server products. And as you look at the effect, not only does that push you into this Windows 10, which is in essence a subscription model for Microsoft, where you have to give up a lot of control on your computer. You don't get to, you don't get to decide when you do updates. Even in the enterprise version, you've got limited control on when you can do those. You do get to at least somewhat schedule when the computer has to do a restart, but you can't not put off an update, whether it's good or not. And we've seen cases where updates, whether it's from Microsoft or from an antivirus company, that really hose your computer where it's no longer usable. But there's another step beyond that, where we look at the internet itself. We're used to just getting on and connecting and doing what we want. I believe as we see more of these attacks happen, there's going to be a call for the next step of internet, and they've already got this planned, so it's not like it's a surprise to those that's in corporate and government America. But for those of us that are just typically on the outside, it's going to be a change where you basically have to have the driver's license for the internet, where you have to go on with your ID, and that's all part of the total control, cashless society, whatever you want to add into that. So that's where I see this event pushing us down the road. Now, if you do have one of those older Microsoft products like XP, make sure you do that update. You don't want to be caught with this ransomware, because it is nasty. And this one's even nastier, because in addition to doing the encryption on your computer, it's got a worm, so it will try to work its way onto any other computer that's on that local network. So it is something to be taken seriously, and you have to get beyond the whack-a-mole and look down the road as where this is going. And unfortunately, I don't really see an alternative for us retaining freedoms. I've talked about this lots of times over the years. We're going to have that collapse coming soon, and it either goes with war or we end up with all this wonderful technology. And even if we did manage to get a hold of it on the United States side, which I don't see that happening, especially with this Congress, you still have the rest of the world, Russia and China and other agents that have their fingers in the pie that are going to cause changes whether we like it or not. Vincent.
Let me see if I've got this right, John. So Microsoft comes out with a statement that claims that stolen U.S. government computer code fuels the cyber attack, and that they say that the software used in this global cyber assault on Friday was stolen from the National Security Agency, NSA. And as a result of your discussion of this, that it could be multiple things. It could be real. It could be stolen code, or it could be a plan by the government to force many people in their own minds to jump on Windows 10, which they lose control of, and will take them wherever Windows 10 wants to take them, including more spying, more surveillance, more storage of personal information. Is that what you're saying?
That's part of it.
It could be just a plan to sell more Windows 10?
Well, it goes way beyond that, because remember, we've talked about the attack on that bank in England where millions of dollars were stolen out of accounts. This attack has, because of the nature of the ransomware, caused problems with all kinds of businesses and governments around the world. And this can only go on so long before people are going to demand a solution. And unfortunately, that solution is more control and less freedom.
It works that way, like almost 100% of the situations. Government, help us, we're in trouble. We need your help. Fix this. Yeah, John, what about Linux? I've got Linux running on our computers here in the studio and at the farm. And are we less vulnerable with Linux or not?
Well, you're less vulnerable, but we've also seen more attacks on Linux. Just because it's open source doesn't mean it doesn't have problems. But even if you have that, you still have to look at the internet side of things. Having Linux is not going to protect you from having to log on to the internet when they decide that they have to know who's doing what.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was just talking about our own network here at the farm. our local area network that we built and we're running our farm on, and we're running the broadcast on.
And that's just the software
fortunately,
side. You look at the hardware
yes,
side.
That's right.
Whether it's a USB drive, anything USB, could be a mouse, could be a keyboard, we got all kinds of things. We're seeing USB devices that are coming, preloaded with malware, and we don't know, especially since a lot of these are manufactured outside of country, we don't know what's been baked into the hardware to allow, spying on or bringing down your device. So it's a really big technical thing to talk about, especially on radio.
Okay, I'm glad you mentioned this, John. I'm holding in my hand right now a piece of plastic. It's just a little bit thicker than a credit card. How thick? The thickness of 2 credit cards. It is the size of a credit card. It's the size of a business card, and it has a little hole in it where you can hook a keychain and take this with you. And it's manufactured so that it contains a flip-out USB drive. So it's a credit card size piece of plastic. It has this locking little USB flip-out drive as part of this card. And it literally has information, the equivalent of many, many, many brochures of information about this company's products. I'm not going to mention the company because it doesn't really matter. It's a very well-respected brand name. So if you saw this and you were in radio, you'd say, these guys have really top-quality gear, good electronic gear that's respectable and trusted. The point I'm trying to make is, I was at a convention where they were giving these away to people, not to anybody, but if you were a bona fide person using this kind of equipment or interested in buying their equipment, which is very expensive, they would give you one of these USB drives with their information on it. Now, can you rewrite them? Sure. But the question is, what's on there? And you're right. They could give these out at a convention with hundreds of thousands of people and infect a whole bunch of computers. Well, I got to tell you, John Ragan, I got a communique from Gwyneth Isaacs in Australia, and they're coming after her. They're coming after her again. The cops are coming after her, and it may not be a good situation. She may be in trouble right this minute. Literally, I'm not exaggerating. It's happening right now, and I do not know if she will be on the air with us tomorrow. If she's arrested, she will not be on the air with us. But if she's not arrested, she will be on the air with us. So, class, if you are inclined to pray, would you consider adding Gwyneth Isaacs to your prayers? Also, Mike Parsons. Mike Parsons is in prison right now. I do not know the details, but he has been arrested. He's been arrested at gunpoint, and this is a while ago. I don't know all the details, but he has been in communication with his wife, and he is in prison. I'm not sure where, but so if you would include him in your prayers, and Gwyneth Isaacs, and the rest of your instructors and their families as well, I would consider that a personal favor if you would do that. I have a special announcement that I'd like to make. Hour number 2. I'll probably make it during hour number 2. And I mentioned that the state of Missouri has applied their full court press on the Finelli family. I mentioned that they were coming after us for non-payment of sales tax. And they were demanding $35,000 for 1 year and $65,000 for another year. And they were applying a lot of pressure to us, extreme pressure. And I mentioned that the Art of War by Sun Tzu is don't tell your enemy what you're doing. Well, that's not how I do it. I mentioned on air, and I mentioned to the state exactly what I would do. And I'll talk a little bit about this. I think you're going to be very surprised at the current status of Vincent Finelli versus the state of Missouri. It's reached the governor's level, and if you're not surprised, I will be surprised. Captain John Ragan, we're talking about ransomware, and it's a big deal. It's a big deal, and I've always been concerned, and I've always believed that on one side of the street you would have the antivirus company, and on the other side of the street you'd have the virus company. And the virus company would make the viruses, and the antivirus company would say, well, we've got an answer for that. Just buy this for $29.99, and you're good for a year. Just like the windshield company would be on one side of the street, and the paving company dropping small chips of rock would be on the other side of the street, and the paving company would be the ones who would drive the business to the broken windshields for replacement. So I'm skeptical, but when I find out that Microsoft is aiming their salvos at the NSA, how evil is it to have a government who would build weapons like this that would literally paralyze countries, shut down hospitals, shut down commerce, shut down rail trains in Germany? How evil is it that a company would, that a government agency would do that? And is it really the government agency, NSA, or is it a whole bunch of government agencies, or is it the government agencies in bed with companies like Microsoft, using built-in known backdoors, doors that were put there so that these operating environments could be exploited for these purposes? What do you think, John?
We can speculate a lot. Bottom line, with this particular attack, just make sure that you have gone in and updated your Microsoft Windows computer with the latest security update from Microsoft. And that's the best you can do at this point.
Do you think we can trust Microsoft?
Well, unfortunately, we don't have a choice but to do what they want. Can we trust them? I don't think so.
Yeah. Okay. Captain John Ragan, I'll be right back after the bottom of the hour commercial announcements. What's next on the list, John?
I'll do a quick talk about the sun, then we'll hit the list.
Okay. We're going to talk about the sun and the weather. We'll be right back. Captain John Ragan is with us. TheFinancialStateOfTheUnion.com. Captain John Ragan, the sun and the weather. What's up?
Well, I was looking at spaceweather.com this morning, and it's been, I don't know if we'll call it a busy week or a non-busy week for the sun. We currently have a stretch of 6 days of no sunspots. For 2017, that now brings us up to 36 days, which is more than a quarter of the year. 2016, last year, we had 32 days for the entire year, so we've expanded beyond that. We have to go back to 2010 when we had the last double-digit day before 2016. There's 51 days for 2010 after that monstrous 2009, where 260 days, or more than 70% of the year, did not have sunspots. Now, this is just more evidence the sun is, going into its, sleeping type phase. There's also an article on space weather right now discussing how cosmic rays are intensifying because the sun gets weaker. That allows more cosmic rays to come in. And from March of 2015 through May 2017, cosmic rays have increased, hitting Earth by 13%. And this especially is important if you fly, because that means you're getting more radiation there at altitude, and the cosmic rays interact with clouds, and that ends up affecting weather. So it's one of those things just to be aware of. And if the sun really shuts down like it did a few hundred years ago, and we have a mini ice age, then things can get really dicey. Otherwise, we're probably looking at what Dane Wigington talks about with all the geoengineering and having temperatures increase. But I think the one thing we can say for sure, it's not going to stay the same. It's going to go one way or the other. Vincent?
And John, one of the things that I've noticed that since Donald Trump has been in office, they're burying the bandits, the nonstop spraying, the crisscrossing of geoengineering is reduced. We have probably 1/10 the amount of spraying of chemtrails over our neck of the woods in Missouri that I was used to seeing when Barry and his thugs were at the helm. And it's kind of nice. It's nice because the sky is clearer, people can breathe better. The damage, a lot of damage has been done. I mean, I'm talking to a lot of people who have respiratory problems, serious respiratory problems. And people are sick as a result, I believe, of these chemical sprayings, including me. But it's nice to see that the skies are sunny the way, not quite the way they were in the 60s and the 50s, but they're approaching that. And it really is nice not to see these overcast, gloomy days. And I don't know how to say this without being offensive. So I'm just going to say it the way I see it. I'm glad to see the dark days of the Obama administration over. And when I say dark, I'm not talking about his color. I am talking about the gloominess, the bad outlook, the poor outlook, the sense of despair, the sense of no hope left for anybody. Those dark days. I'm glad to see them gone. And I'm glad to see that he is not in the news 24 hours a day. However, he is in the news because he's raking in money, traveling to Europe. And the question is, who's paying for this? What influence does he still have? And why are people paying him to show up? I couldn't stand listening to that guy when it was free. Who in their right mind would pay to hear his voice? Who'd even want to have him on their property? If he showed up and said, "Hey, Vinny, I'd love to check out your cows. Would that be okay?" I'd say, "Get out of here." I wouldn't allow him on the property. I wouldn't. And if I got an offer to sell beef for 100 times what we normally sell it for so that he could have it, I'd pass. I would pass. I want nothing to do with him. He's done so much damage to our country. It's an intergalactic disgrace. And so is Hillary Clinton. Back to you, John.
Well, we've talked about what happens in a grid down situation. And one of the things with the power out is that the sewers no longer work because there's no power to pump the poop further down the line. And no matter how we describe this, you don't really picture it. Unfortunately for this woman experienced a sewer line break, and this caused this is in New Jersey, this caused a flood into her home, and there's pictures there. And it's a lot of brown water, and you just be glad they don't have smell-o-vision yet.
Yeah, that's a really good point, John, that you're bringing up. When I lived in Virginia, I was having lunch with a bunch of guys, and we were talking about, they were ham radio operator types, and we were talking about antennas and how high they should be, and this one guy was talking about how he lived at the bottom of a hill, and so his antenna height was a challenge for him because he lived at the bottom of the hill. And he said, but that's not the only problem. There's another problem. When you live at the bottom of the hill, you're at the lowest point of the, you're at a low point in the scheme of water pressure, city water. So what happens is, if you have that water tank, that water tower, the water gets pumped up into this big tank, and gravity is used to deliver the water throughout the city water system. Well, if you have the lowest point property, yours is lower than everybody else's. You have more water pressure than everybody else. And that could be a problem. So if you have a hot water heater that just might be predisposed to a leak, you'll probably have a leak faster than you normally would because there's more water pressure. So normally if the water pressure is 40 pounds per square inch, his was about 100 pounds per square inch. That's what he told me. So it was a real challenge for him to keep his pipes from bursting. Now, the same thing holds true if you have a sewer system and you're at the low point because water runs downhill. So I was in Utah one day, and this guy was showing me his survival basement. He was showing me all his food and stuff, and so he showed me his bathroom that he had all ready, for his survival. And should things get bad, they could run into the basement and batten down the hatches, and everything would be good. And I looked at his toilet in his bathtub, and I said, the drain on your bathtub is at like an inch above floor level, 2 or 3 inches above floor level. So what are you going to do about that? When the pumps stopped pumping the sewage because everybody abandoned ship and went home, at the municipal level for sewage treatment, what are you going to do? Because water runs downhill. And I said, not only that, but this toilet that you have here has a trap on it with a wax seal. And sewage is going to come up through the toilet as well. And the answer was, I never thought about that. So the word to the wise is they make these plugs that you can get that expand. They're rubber plugs. You can get them at the big box hardware store. You pull out the drain for the toilet and you put this plug in. However, the plumbing is really not designed to hold a lot of pressure for bathtubs and sinks and toilets. So worst case is you may have to take the toilet off, unbolt it from the floor, and put a 3 or 4 inch plug in there that will expand. And you may have to do the same thing with your plumbing and your sinks and tub. Just something to think about, because the same thing could happen to you when the pumps stop pumping or the grid goes down. But the best thing you can do is don't buy a house or live in a property that's downhill from everybody else. When we built our house, we built it as high up as we could. And where is our septic system and our leach field? Lower than the basement. Gravity's going to be working in our favor 24/7 by design. Just want to share that thought, John.
Well, let's skip on down to we're all community members. And this comes out of the People's Republic of Seattle. The police change suspect to community members on reports. So they no longer have suspects as community members. And given the police state of America, I'd say we're all community members now.
Yeah. I'm still looking at the business card right here in the studio of the Chief of Police, Tony L. Jones, Caruthersville Police Department, and Caruthersville, Missouri. And he's the guy that I saw pumping fuel into his brand new Ghost Edition, stealth, hard to see police car. Yep. It's really hard. It's very hard to respect people that snipe and that hide in the dark and that want to eavesdrop, monitor, and say, get on the ground, get on the ground, get on the ground. It's hard to respect that, at least from my perspective. Captain John Ragan, I'll be right back after these few short commercial announcements. And I have a special announcement that I'd like to share with you regarding the attack by the Missouri Department of Revenue. They're parasites on the Finelli family. And we'll do that coming up in the next 15 minutes or so.
Well, let's skip down to death powder. This article comes from allnewspipeline.com. I see a lot of information from their site. I normally don't use it on air because they tend to sensationalize a bit. But this is a pretty decent article, and it's got some good links in there as well. There's this powder been going around. It's been used to lace heroin, and it's used as a elephant tranquilizer. It's very, very powerful, and it's contributed to overdose deaths. And for me, it's and I think it should be for those of us that's in the truth media, pretty scary. It just takes a small amount of this to kill on contact. And I'm wondering if we're going to have to start wearing gloves and masks to open mail that we're not expecting from private sources. It also being at conferences where you are around a lot of people, just a little bit of this and could be fatal. And how easy would that be to put on a surface or into a drink? We're definitely living in interesting times. And,
and
as you talked about earlier, on
some sick people out there.
On praying for people, you really should be praying for those that are in the modern media that's trying to get good information out, because they're under attack from multiple sides. They're having their livelihood taken from them with what's been happening with YouTube. There's been other attacks that have taken away funding sources. There's the legal attacks, and this is just one of the angles that I see being in the physical attacks.
John, since you mentioned that, it's time to probably talk about what do you do when you get the mail. Class, we're very careful about mail here at the farm, and the entire family looks at mail with skepticism. And we take every precaution we can when we receive mail. We look at who sent it, where it's coming from, and what we think it is. And if we don't think that it's bona fide, if we're not sure where it's coming from, in the trash it goes. It's kind of like phone calls. We seem to think when the phone rings, it could be important. If we don't know where the phone call's coming from, don't expect us to answer the phone. If we don't know where the mail's coming from, don't expect us to open it. If we can't figure it out, in the trash it goes. If we buy something, we check. We check what we bought with who shipped it. And we're very, very careful. We have respirators ready for use at all times. We have gloves, disposable gloves, the kind that you see surgeons and nurses and phlebotomists wear, available at all times. John Ragan brought up a very, very good point, and I don't want to scare you, but there are a lot of sick people out there. It only takes one of them to destroy your family's lives. When we come back, I've got an announcement for you. State of Missouri versus Vincent Finelli. And I'll tell you what they did, what we did, and what happened. I think you might be surprised. We'll be right back after top of the hour news and commercial announcements. And it'll probably take me all that time to calm down. We'll be right back. Everyone all set, cocked, locked, hour number 2 of USAPrepares.com. And I see on the call board live from Australia, Gwyneth. Gwyneth, we asked for prayers for you. Are they working?
Yes. I'll tell you what happened. I didn't show up to the bogus kangaroo court appearance today. I sent a letter and instead I actually on Facebook Messenger, I don't normally use it, but I used Facebook Messenger to send you a copy of the letter that I sent to the court. So if you want to post that on USA Prepares site, of course, that's quite all right. They didn't come and get me. The police car, the normal, regular, scheduled police car pass, who's been going past as far as I can tell, even before we moved on to this block, went past this afternoon and didn't even slow down, didn't stop, didn't come and get me. There is a way of handling these guys, but it's very, very specific of what you have, of how you have to behave and what you have to do. And so anyway, I'm still out and about in the universe. I just thought I would call up the program and let the class know.
I'm delighted. I'm delighted that you still have freedom. Gwyneth, let's spend tomorrow's broadcast talking about the way you need to do things, and I will share a little bit more detail with our class about the Missouri Department of Revenue's attack on the Finelli family. So that's tomorrow's broadcast, okay?
Okay, that's great. That's all I wanted to say.
Great.
I'll probably listen to the rest of the broadcast on, Rod Gibson's channel tomorrow. I have no idea what you've been talking
Sounds
about.
good. We'll see. Okay. Well, we'll see you on the air tomorrow. Thank you so much, Gwyneth. I'm glad you're okay.
That's quite all right. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. That's Gwyneth Isaacs, USA Prepares Instructor, live from Australia. It looked like the police were planning to arrest her, and that was the message I got over the weekend. And it looks like they decided not to. Good. Well, Captain John Ragan, I wanted to share this with our class. It's pretty serious. There was an unprovoked systematic attack on our family by the state of Missouri Department of Revenue. And it got escalated all the way to the General Counsel's office. And they were demanding that we pay them $35,000 in unpaid Missouri state sales tax and also $65,000 for a different year. So for 2 years, it's $35,000 plus $65,000 or $100,000 in round numbers. Non-payment of state sales tax was their claim. And we received letters, and they said that we would have to go to a hearing and looked like there would be a trial. And the more they demanded from us, the more I resisted giving information to them. I demanded to know who our accusers were. I demanded to know exactly what these sales were and exactly what comprised this $100,000. And the more I demanded, the more they demanded, and the more they wanted all of our emails, and then they'll never get them. And they wanted all sales records. And, I have all that information. I do. And I mentioned on the air that many times that we've been audited many times. And we have always prevailed. Always. And the reason we always prevail is we use their rules. We use their rule book. We write in the margins. We print them out. And I read their rules very, very carefully. It takes me a long time to prepare our taxes. Mrs. Finelli and I prepare our taxes very carefully using their rules. And we take it to the letter. And when you have to interpret, we interpret. And we write what our interpretation means at the time we take the deductions. And for those of you who remember, I have traveled around the country teaching a seminar on how you can start your own business and take the same tax deductions that the wealthy take. And we take the same tax deductions the wealthy take. They're there for you to use. You can get them printed. They're in Publication 17, irs.gov, Publication 17. I stopped teaching that seminar, probably because I thought I was wasting my time. I would talk and talk and talk about how to do it, but I hardly think anybody would do it. They'd listen, they'd smile, and they'd go, yep. But I don't believe anybody followed our plan, our information, what I told them. It's too hard. It's way too hard. You have to think. So I stopped doing it. But I have been audited at least, when I was a real estate investor, at least 10 times. State, federal. So I know what it's like. And I'm always ready for audits. I'm ready because I use their rules and I write down exactly what I do and why I do it at the time I do it. So when they ask me 3, 4 years later, 2 years later, why I did what I did, no problem. I know why I did what I did. And I file on time. And all of our sales tax are paid. But the state of Missouri came after us. And they were brutal. They threatened us. They threatened us with liens. And when you back me into a corner, there's no place for me to go except coming out swinging. And I said, here's what I'm going to do. Now, Sun Tzu says, in the art of war, surprise. That's not what I do. I let these parasites, these government parasites, know exactly what I was going to do. I told them they would be tried in the media. I would expose them for the corruption. And they had no jurisdiction. I said, prove it. You say that we owe this money? Prove it. Show me. I'm interested in seeing. Who are our accusers? Mrs. Finelli suggested that I behave nicely when I meet with these people. I suggested that she wait in the lobby Here's how I look at it. You know that smiling sweet gal behind the real high countertop that you can't jump over? That's there for a reason. That's because I believe that people would want to jump over and mete out their frustrations on the people they see who are trying to attack and steal your property. I look at them all the same. I look at the top guy who tells them, here are your marching orders. Go get revenue from the little people. Go get revenue from the villagers. I look at them all as the same because the secretary, the receptionist, they're all taking a paycheck and they're all, I got to do this job. I have to do this job because if I don't do what they say, I'll lose my job. So I have to beat up the villagers. So they're all the same. The guy who says, go beat up the villagers, go get revenue. The guys who sit behind the keyboards and send out these threatening letters. The attorneys, all of them. All of these people who work in these offices, these government extraction offices, these terroristic offices, these people who issue these terroristic threats, these financial threats against we the villagers, I look at them all the same. And am I going to be nice? Are you kidding me? When someone threatens to steal my farm, am I going to be nice? Am I going to play nice? Am I going to say, well, maybe if we just give them half the farm, they'll leave us alone. Maybe if we just give them the driveway. Maybe if we just give them our cars and trucks and tractors and equipment. Maybe if we just give them half of our bank account. How about half of our cows? No way! When I met with senior counsel, I had a penny in my pocket. I didn't pull it out. But the last thing I was going to do, I didn't need to do this, but the last thing I was going to do was pull it out and put it on the conference room table and say, Mr. Sullivan, if all I have to do is give you this penny and have this thing go away, you're not getting it. So, what's happened? I have a letter in front of me. On the upper left-hand corner, it says Eric R. Greitens, Governor. Then it has Joel W. Walters, Acting Director of Revenue. Then it has Ryan Asbridge, General Counsel. It's got the state seal on it. It's got gold, the gold state seal. We're overpaying for this letterhead. These guys don't deserve gold. Missouri Department of Revenue, General Counsel's Office, and it has their address. Vincent Finelli. Ray. Vincent Finelli versus the Director of Revenue and the case number. Dear Mr. Finelli, I'm going to read you every word of this letter. Dear Mr. Finelli, enclosed, please find a motion to dismiss your appeal with the Commission because the Department of Revenue has withdrawn the assessment issued to you. Based on the information received, the Department now agrees you are not liable for the amounts assessed by the Department in the assessments issued, and they have a date. Now, the next part is amazing. I've never seen anything like this. I apologize for the confusion and any inconvenience this matter may have caused you. The department had limited information about your business activities because your business was not registered for sales tax with the department and has not filed sales tax returns. Really? Therefore, the department sought to confirm whether your business had any sales other than those that are exempt from sales tax under and has section title. I hope this satisfactorily resolves this matter, but please do not hesitate to contact me, and phone numbers there, if you have any remaining questions in the future. And it's signed Stephen P. Sullivan. Now, who is he? He's senior counsel for the parasites. They dropped it. These financial perverts, these financial terrorists dropped the case against Vincent Finelli. Why? Because they're wrong. Did they cause us harm? You bet they did. Did they cause us distress? You bet they did. Now, any further problems that we have with these guys will cost them $1,000 an hour for my time. So, class, as a result of this attack, this unprovoked systematic attack on the Finelli family, and by the state of Missouri Department of Revenue, I called for an investigation of the Department of Revenue. I sent a copy of the letter to the governor of the state of Missouri, sent a letter to the St. Louis newspaper, the big one in St. Louis, and I sent a copy to our alleged representative, Hannah Kelly, our alleged state representative. And I'm looking forward to seeing whether any of these individuals respond. If they don't, I'll report it. If they do, I'll report it. And I'm so angry. I'm so angry at what these thugs have done to us. these threats that have been leveled to us, I decided that we need to have a bill put before our alleged representatives. And that bill needs to say that, just like one sentence, this is a simple bill. There is no personal property tax in the state of Missouri. So if you buy equipment, if you buy a thing, if you buy a car, and you've already paid tax on it to get it, and you've paid sales tax to get it, and you've paid tax on your income to earn the income to save to buy that thing, whatever it may be, and then the state of Missouri wants to tax you in perpetuity for keeping that particular item or items, it needs to stop right now. So this one sentence bill of no personal property tax needs to be passed in Missouri, as well as other states. And I'm going to call on our alleged representatives to bring this bill up. And I'm going to say either they introduce this bill or they're with the enemy. Either they're with us or they're with the enemy. Either bring this bill and pass this bill that the personal property tax stops right now, or they're against us and we need to fire every single one of them. That's what I'm going to do. And class, no more tipping. You don't tip anybody anymore. You go to a restaurant, no tips. You give a gift if you choose to. And you tell them it's a gift. It is not a tip. You're not tipping them because tips are taxable. Up to $14,000 in gifts per year are tax exempt by the IRS. Their rules. So if you decide that you're going to tip 15, 20% or more, whatever you decide to do, it's no longer a tip. It's a gift. And you put a little note. You say, this is not a tip. This is a gift. This is from me to you. Because you're a nice person, I wanted to give you this gift. That's it. Now it's a gift. And it's exempt from federal taxes. So if I decide I want to give someone a gift for helping me on the farm, as a way of they get trained, they help us while they're learning, and I give them a gift. I'm not paying them. I'm not tipping them. I'm going to give them a gift. And that's what we're going to do. No more tipping. Let's cut the government out. Why? Because they've shown us how evil they are. I'm mounting this campaign against giving the state of Missouri any money. And when I go on the internet and I buy something, and if it says that it's in the state of Missouri, and I have to pay sales tax on it, I shop someplace else. I'm doing everything I can to eliminate, legally, the paying of the state of Missouri any tax revenue on sales. I will buy it used. I'll buy it from a person. I'll trade for it. I'll buy it out of state. And there's no tax due on things that I use for the farm. And I'm not paying it. I'm annoyed. I'm annoyed that they put us through the meat grinder. But they did say they were sorry. And they did yield. They did yield. But it took a long time. It took months of pure torture. And these guys are terrorists. And I have no respect for any of them. Top to bottom. We need to disband the Department of Revenue, top to bottom. Everybody needs to be fired. And they say, the secretaries and the little people that work there, fire them too. Clean house. Clean house. Get rid of them all. Start over with maybe just a couple % of them. John Ragan? Boy, I'm grumpy. I'll tell you what, these steroids I'm on are making me really grumpy. And maybe it's a good thing. Because I'm not taking it anymore. I'm not taking it from anybody anymore. I don't care who they are. When they're wrong, they're wrong. And I'm going to let them know. And if they're grumpy in stores, I'm going to tell them and I'm going to leave. John, one last thing about me being grumpy. Well, I'm working on version 1.3 of Italian beef, and I'll post that recipe. It's really quite good. And it requires pepperoncini. Those are pickled peppers. And I add them to the chuck roast that I put in the crock pot. And so I was running out of them, and I thought, I'll go to Sam's Club. They don't have any. I went to the largest Walmart in Springfield, Missouri. They don't have any. So I went to this store called Food for Less. You've probably seen that when you lived in Springfield. Got a great big yellow sign, Food for Less. Pretty big. They had some unusual items in there. And I went in there, and sure enough, they had a gallon jug, but it was about $11 with tax. And I refused to spend $11 for something that should cost maybe $7. So on the way out, they had this greeter guy there, and he hands you the card on the way in. And I was just waiting for him to say, "Did you find everything okay?" And I would have leveled this at him, and I would have said, "Are you kidding me? The only difference that I see between you guys and Jesse James is the gun. I'm really getting annoyed, and I'm starting to speak out even more than usual about things I don't like, John. So I just wanted to share that with you. And maybe when I get off these steroids in a couple more weeks, I'll return to something a little more like the old Vin Finelli. But right now, I'm enjoying these fights. I really am. Back to you, John.
Well, 25 years ago, it was a Friday. And the reason I know that is because 25 years ago tomorrow was a Saturday. And what made that Saturday different is I got up real early that morning. I was living in Houston, traveled to Beaumont to the graduation ceremonies of Lamar University to watch Becky dance across stage to get her bachelor's degree. That afternoon, we returned to Houston, and she got her MRS. And so tomorrow's our 25th anniversary. It's been a 25-year honeymoon. I don't know any better way of describing that. And if it weren't for the wonderful person she is, I wouldn't be able to do what I do here on air.
All right, that's absolutely true, because she and you have a well-oiled marriage, well-oiled machine, and you support each other's efforts and opinions and decisions, and you work on things together. It's really great. And so my thanks go out to Rebecca as well for her willingness to support you in your endeavor for the writings and the teachings and the time that you spend on the road traveling and educating people who would miss your insights. I think it's wonderful. And I as well am fortunate because Mrs. Finelli supports my interests and my efforts, and of course it's reciprocal. And John, they say opposites attract. I think it's absolutely nonsense. I think you have to have a spouse of the same socioeconomic values, of a similar pursuit of education, a similar set of values, morals, ideals, ethics. And I think I learned last weekend about a young couple. They met each other and about a year ago. So they met each other, fell in love, and it was just bliss in their minds. 6 months later, they got married. Our son went to the wedding. They're just in love. Everything was wonderful. About a week ago, she says to him, I'm paraphrasing, got some decisions to make where you're going to live, because you're out of here. The wedded bliss is over. She threw him out. The lease was in her name. He has a brand new, very expensive truck that they could afford. He had a good job. He lost his job because he can't live where they were living. She gave him a couple hours to get his stuff out. That was before she cleaned out the bank accounts, took all the money, all the savings. He's penniless, lost his job, lost his house, lost his wife. Because, well, she wasn't quite sure when she married him, but now she's sure that she didn't want to marry him. So, to take a page out of my mother's book, my mother said, you know what, this was almost 40 years ago. She said, you know what, just live in sin. This is my mother. My mother said, she didn't quite say it that way, but what she said was, if you're not sure, don't get married. Live together and see if it works out. If it doesn't work out, you can walk away. Now, my page would be, never get married in the eyes of the state. Just declare yourself married. Just have some witnesses, some friends over. Do whatever you want. Don't put the money into that great big wedding. Save the money, put it into property or something important for your future. Declare yourself married, keep the state out of it. Because once you get that marriage license, that's when you're married. Not you get the marriage license and you go to church and you have this big formal thing and you think that's when you get married, I do, and all that. No, you got married when you got the license, weeks before. Make sure you fully understand who you're marrying. And you know what? You might decide that it was a good thing to live with that person for a short time and not get married. Or you might decide, yeah, you know what? It really is a good idea. And then just declare yourself married. John, do you have any thoughts on that?
That would take more time than what we have left.
Okay, back to you.
Let's skip down under hour 2 to the real inflation. And this is research out of Devonshire Research Group that says true inflation is 3 times higher than officially reported. And I'm sure this comes as no surprise for many of you, especially those that are on Social Security. The government has these made-up indices like the Consumer Price Index that was designed to lower the amount of increases that Social Security recipients, military retirees, and even current military and civil service workers receive. The problem is when you understate inflation, you are overstating GDP. So this GDP growth that you see is not nearly as good as they say it is, and even on the face of it, it's not good already. There's another article we didn't get to in hour 1 called Sideways Income, and that shows how since the 70s, income for most people in real terms based on these phony indexes essentially has not grown. Your purchasing power back then is the same as now, unless you were making really good income back then, 6-figure income back then, bought a whole lot more than today. Somebody making $100,000 now has the purchasing power of $200,000, and if you're above that, it gets even better for you. But for those of us in the more normal income range, sideways. However, if you take into account this research, that sideways is no longer sideways. It becomes negative, and even those that were what we would call the upper class, not the wealthy, over this time frame, that might force their increase to go sideways. So this article really is a little bit bigger news than what it says. Of course, I don't expect this to be reported on in the official media because it doesn't help the powers that be push their agenda. Vincent?
Let me add a dot to this. I wanted to buy a vise for our barn, and I wanted to buy either 5 or 6 inch vise, so we can repair equipment in the barn. And so I got on the internet and I looked at vices, and you can get them. $40, $45, $50, $60. And I was interested in what they were made with, and I typed in the exact vices I looked up on the internet, and I typed in reviews and opinions. And they're made in China. Most of the vices that are made, I'm talking about a bench vice class. Most of the vices are made in China. And people would say, yeah, they turned the handle and it broke. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine a cast iron vise? You turn the handle, or the lever, and it breaks in half because they're so flimsy. And I found this of all kinds of vices, regardless of the brand. A lot of them are made in China. And I looked at the weight, and 29 pounds. So I found a guy on Craigslist, and he had a vise, and it was a 5-inch vise. And I asked him if he'd weigh it for me. Called him up. Called me right back. He said it weighs 59 pounds. I paid $65 for this used vise. Used. It's probably 40 years old. It's got some dings and dents in it, but it weighs 59 pounds. And it will probably last a couple lifetimes if it doesn't get rusted. What I'm saying is, when you talk about inflation, the vices today weigh half of what they used to weigh, half the materials in them. The cost is probably the same as it was, but the quality isn't there. And so what I'm finding, John Ragan, is that I'm not even looking for new things. I'm looking for vintage things. Vintage things that were heavier, better, more durable, made with copper instead of some other copper-plated material. I'm talking about quality. The quality is going down, and the durability is going down. And I look at that as part of inflation. So not only are the prices different, but the quality is different. The durability is different. And even if you're buying a ceiling fan, you might be better off buying a gently used ceiling fan from somebody than a brand new one that's made in China. Think about that. Think about that, class. That's where we are right now. We'll be right back. Class, just want to make sure that I'm very clear on this. I believe in being nice. I believe in being pleasant. But not when someone's trying to steal your property. When they're trying to take things that you've worked hard for, generations of your family have worked hard for things, they're trying to steal it from you, and they're a bunch of parasites. It's war. It's war. Okay? I'm not going to be nice when people are trying to do that to me. I'm not going to be nice to politicians who are trying to steal from me. But everyone else, absolutely, I'll be nice to. And I'll help them any way I can. Back to you, John Ragan.
The last article in hour 2, Fahrenheit 451, that refers to a novel written by Ray Bradbury and later became a movie in 1966. And what's happening today in California, we have colleges removing books from their library. They list UC Berkeley in particular, removing 135,000 books from its library, claiming that by digitizing the books, library space can be reused for meeting rooms and nap pods for the poor little snowflakes. And this really, if you haven't seen the movie, books became illegal. The firemen would come out, take the books, and burn them. And as it says in this article, many of these books have been destroyed. When you have the digitized versions, they can be modified to any way, any manner that they so desire, and they can also remove access or even delete the book. It's kind of a scary point in history when we have universities going to this level of control of knowledge. Vincent.
Okay, so John, someone goes to the dollar store, pays $1 plus tax and gets a can of spray paint, goes into a library, takes his red spray paint, and just walks down the aisle where the books are and just puts a one line, just walks forward and sprays to the side a red stripe on 200 books or one book. That would be considered a crime. Destruction of public property, if it's a public library. Destruction of public property. That's just putting a red stripe. Does it affect the reading of the book? No. We're talking about the physical destruction, the burning, the destroying of public property by a bunch of thugs who we've hired to represent our interests. Those people need to be arrested and tried for destruction of public property. They need to be jailed temporarily, await trial, convicted, and imprisoned for stealing from us. That's what we're talking about, John. This is nap pods, really? So you can take a nap? That's not what a library was never designed for going to take a nap. Never. Meeting rooms, that's an afterthought. Libraries were designed for researching facts and information and studying and quiet and learning. They weren't designed for public meetings, but that's what they become. Places for meetings. Napping. You kidding? If you're tired, stay home. John, this angers me. I mean, it really angers me because it touches a nerve. I fought against this when I was a computer consultant. I said, are you kidding? You want to put all this information on the computers and let some guys in California run the lessons? And they want to change who won what war and why and change what happened in history, change it with some keystrokes, and now it's universal and everybody gets the same wrong information now? Are you kidding? It's hard to change books. That's why they want to get rid of them. John, is that correct?
Yeah, and blockchain is going to do the same thing for privately owned books.
Makes me sick. Makes me sick. And what we've done here at our farm, thousands and thousands and thousands of books. If we don't have 5,000 books here at our farm, I'll be very surprised. Captain John Ragan, thanks so much for being with us, for helping us, teaching us, and all of your hard work.